This happened just a few months ago, back in the spring, during that weird in-between stage of my life. I had just graduated, no job yet, and way too much free time. At first, it sounded like a dream. I finished school a semester early, no more late nights buried in assignments. But the reality? It was awful. Most of my friends were still busy with finals, my full-time job wouldn't start until June, and I was stuck at home, wasting away in silence. I'm the type of person who needs to stay busy, and with nothing to do, every day felt like it was draining me. That's probably why, when my mom asked me to check on my Uncle Rick's beach house, I said yes without thinking. It was supposed to be simple. Just a quick drive down to Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, look over the place. From Pennsylvania, it's only a 2-hour trip, nothing crazy. Uncle Rick's house is massive, the kind of place that can hold my entire extended family when we all cram in every summer. 25 people under one roof, drinking too much, playing games, and making memories. The house isn't right on the shoreline, but close enough to smell the ocean breeze, tucked in a quiet neighborhood with winding roads and tall beach grass. That late afternoon, on some random weekday I can't even remember, I packed my things, hopped in the car, and started the drive. Looking back now, I wish I'd left earlier, because what I found there wasn't the peaceful favor I thought it would be. When I got to the house, everything seemed normal. I walked in with my uncle's checklist, checked faucets, breakers, windows, doors. Everything looked fine. But the silence was what got to me. I'd never seen that house empty. Normally it was loud, packed with family, board games scattered everywhere, laughter and drinking echoing through the halls. Now it felt abandoned, almost like I was trespassing in a place I should have known by heart. Every creak of the floorboards seemed louder than it should have been. By the time I finished looking around, it was already dark, and I've always hated driving at night. I texted my mom, told her I'd stay over, and she agreed. I made some food, scrolled on my phone, and tried to relax, but the emptiness never left. It was strange how a place that once felt so alive could suddenly feel so hollow. Usually in summer, I got crammed into one of the tiny third-floor rooms while relatives took the nicer ones. But with the house to myself, I took the master bedroom on the second floor. Huge bed, private bathroom, giant walk-in closet. It felt like I'd stolen some luxury. Around midnight, I crawled in, letting myself sink into the comfort. For a few minutes, I just lay there, listening to the quiet, trying to convince myself that the unease was only in my head. Eventually, exhaustion caught up. I drifted off, unaware that the silence of that night was about to break. And when it did, nothing about that beach house would ever feel the same again. I don't remember what time it was when I woke up, only that something jolted me awake. At first, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it, but the sound was too clear, like something had just shifted or fallen inside the closet. My eyes darted toward it without me even realizing, and immediately my heart started hammering. It's a strange thing, lying there wide awake, but unable to make yourself move. Not full-on sleep paralysis, but close. My body could move if I wanted, but every instinct screamed not to. I shut my eyes tight, whispering to myself that it was nothing, that I just needed to go back to sleep. For a second, I almost did. Then came the second noise, a muffled thump, soft but heavy, directly from inside the closet. My stomach sank. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see blurry outlines, telling myself maybe I was imagining things, but deep down I knew I wasn't. And that's when it hit me for real. True paralysis. Not just fear keeping me down, but my body actually locked. I couldn't move a muscle even as I begged myself to get up. The closet door creaked. So slow, so deliberate. My eyes, barely open, caught the outline of something stepping out. A dark figure slid into the room and stopped right next to the bed. It didn't say a word, it didn't move. It just stood there, staring. Every second stretched into eternity. My chest ached from holding my breath. And then, without warning, it turned. The figure drifted out of the room as quietly as it had come, Relief almost rushed in, until I heard the footsteps again. But instead of heading downstairs toward the exit, they moved upward, each step groaning on the wooden staircase as they climbed to the 3rd floor. My heart sank. That floor had no way out. Whoever it was had cornered themselves. Unless they weren't the ones trapped at all, I was. I lay there frozen, the silence heavier than ever, knowing the only thing I could do was wait.
After a few painful moments, I forced myself out of the paralysis and reached for my phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I whispered to the dispatcher that someone was inside the house, then quietly locked the bedroom door. Minutes felt endless until red and blue lights flashed outside. Relief nearly made me collapse. The police stormed in, sweeping the house, but came back saying it was empty. Empty. I swore I'd heard footsteps go upstairs, and there was no way out from the 3rd floor. He had to still be there. They brushed me off, saying fear made me imagine things, but I knew better. I called Rick, who was furious. He demanded they search again, reminding them my life could be at risk. This time they went slower, methodical, opening closets, checking under beds, pulling back shower curtains, tapping walls. I followed them nervously until they froze at one window on the 3rd floor. It was unlocked. I hadn't touched it. One officer stayed while another stepped outside to check the property. I followed him out, sick with dread. His flashlight swept across the yard, then up the roof, and froze. My stomach dropped. There he was, the man from my room. He sat on the roof, bald, filthy, clothes in tatters, staring with that vacant, chilling expression. He didn't move. The cops called backup, surrounding the house. I hugged myself, shaking as they pulled him down and cuffed him. When they dragged him past me, he stared, empty but full of hatred, like I'd ruined something for him. The police said he was probably homeless, squatting there for days, maybe weeks. But when questioned how he got in, how long he'd been there, why he hid in the closet, he said nothing. Just sat there with that same blank look, like none of it mattered. They shoved him into the car, and he was gone. But the damage was done. I can't shake the memory of him standing silently by my bed. Even now, when the house creaks at night, I wonder if he really left, or if he's still waiting somewhere in the dark. The whole thing was so insane that even now, I still can't wrap my head around it. No matter how many times I replayed that night in my mind, I can't explain why he was hiding in that closet of all places. Maybe he panicked when he heard me enter. Maybe it was pure chance. But the truth is, I'll never really know. Even Rick has no idea how he got inside, and the roof explanation just doesn't make sense. There's no way up there from the ground, not without someone noticing. My family keeps begging Rick to install better security, but for reasons I'll never understand, he refuses. And here's the thought that chills me the most. If I had stayed in my usual room on the 3rd floor instead of the master that night, things could have ended very differently. Sometimes it's not about luck, it's about being unlucky enough to realize how close danger really is. My buddy Mike has this beach house on the Jersey Shore, and calling it nice doesn't even come close. It's the kind of place that feels almost unreal, especially to someone like me who didn't grow up with much. The house has been in Mike's family for generations, built with memories stacked into every wall. His grandparents always dreamed of living there full-time, but after they passed away, the place sat empty most of the year. Mike's parents were too busy to use it, and most of his relatives live on the West Coast, so it just became this beautiful but quiet house, waiting for someone to bring it back to life. The silver lining in all that was that Mike basically had free access whenever he wanted, and that meant sometimes I did too. I'd heard his dad mention renting it out for extra income, but nothing ever came of it, especially during the off-season when hardly anyone wanted to stay by the beach. Then, in mid-July, Mike texted me asking if I wanted to come down for the weekend. He didn't need to ask twice. I had nothing going on, and the idea of a weekend by the water with the beach during the day and the boardwalk at night sounded perfect. This wasn't going to be some wild party trip, just a low-key escape. That Friday, I tossed a duffel bag into his trunk, climbed into the passenger seat, and we headed down the shore, completely unaware of what was waiting for us. The first night started off perfectly normal. We got in around 6, tossed our bags into the upstairs bedrooms, and let ourselves settle into that classic beach house vibe. You know the smell I mean.
That mix of salty air and old wood, not bad, more like the house had soaked up decades of summers. After grabbing subs from a little shop nearby, we took a walk down to the beach just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. Mike had brought a couple fishing rods, so we set up on the shore. It wasn't really about catching anything, it was just about being there, feeling the sand under our feet and listening to the waves crash. At one point, we ran into two girls our age, wandering barefoot along the waterline. Mike, being Mike, jumped into conversation without hesitation, and for a while it felt like one of those carefree nights where time slows down. They were semi-locals, friendly, and the interaction was easy. Light flirting, exchanged numbers, smiles that hung in the air. Then they kept walking while we went back to casting lines into the dark water. The beach wasn't empty, but Mike knew the quieter paths. He led us away from the glow of the boardwalk, past the dunes, and into those shadowy pockets between beach houses where the streetlights didn't reach. Out there, the world felt different. The laughter of tourists faded, the air turned heavier, and the only sounds left were the endless crash of waves and the whistle of the wind. For a while it was perfect, almost too perfect, like the calm before something you can't see coming.
The next morning, we woke up around 9 and went for a run along the boardwalk. The sun was already strong, but the cool ocean breeze made it feel easy, almost refreshing. We weren't pushing hard, just a couple miles to shake off the night before. Mike's always been active, and I've been trying to keep up, so it felt good to move. The rest of the day passed in a blur of beach air and lazy downtime. By evening, Mike suggested we hit a few bars in Seaside, but honestly, we were drained. The idea of waiting in lines, shouting over pounding music, just didn't match how we felt. So instead, we stayed in. At the time, it seemed like the smarter choice. But looking back, it was that decision that kept us inside the house long enough to hear things we probably weren't meant to.
Sometime after midnight, I shot awake to the sound of a shrill, piercing beep. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then it cut through the silence again, sharp and high-pitched, the kind of alarm that makes your skin crawl. My heart skipped. It sounded exactly like a smoke detector, so I bolted out of bed, scanning the room for smoke or flames. Nothing. I stood frozen for a second, straining my ears, and realized the sound wasn't coming from my floor at all. It was above me. Without thinking twice, I ran straight to Mike's room, shaking him awake. He sat up instantly, catching the urgency in my voice, and together we sprinted upstairs. The third floor was swallowed in darkness, except for faint moonlight pooling at the far window. We flicked on the light, bracing ourselves for fire, but there was nothing. No smoke, no sparks, no smell. The beeping still rang, relentless, making every second stretch into forever. We searched room after room, growing more uneasy, until finally I followed the sound into one of the bedrooms. That's when I saw it. Tucked neatly under a pillow, hidden like it wasn't meant to be found, was a small black device.
For a second, I didn't even want to touch it. It was the size of a walkie-talkie, smooth and featureless except for a single blinking red light on top. No brand, no stickers, nothing. Just a strange casing and what looked like a tiny switch on the side. I swallowed hard and flipped the switch. Instantly, the beeping died. The silence that followed was even worse. It was heavy, suffocating, like the whole house was holding its breath. Right then, Mike appeared in the doorway. His eyes darted from the pillow to the device in my hand. We locked eyes, both of us trying to make sense of what I was holding, and in that moment the weight of it hit me. This wasn't a smoke detector. This wasn't anything normal. Someone had put it here, hidden under that pillow, and the thought of who that someone might be made my stomach twist. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. We both knew deep down that we weren't alone in that beach house. After a few seconds of heavy silence, Mike finally asked if I had ever seen that black device before. I told him no, and when I asked him the same, he shook his head. For the next hour we sat there trying to come up with any explanation. What the thing was, why it was hidden under a pillow, how it had gone off. But nothing made sense. Mike swore his family hadn't stayed in that house for months, and honestly, I believed him. Why would anyone in his family hide something like that in their own home? At first, we tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was some kind of safety device, or maybe a weird replacement for a smoke alarm. But if that were the case, why did it go off without any fire? The more we thought about it, the more unsettling it felt. That's when a chilling idea hit me. I still don't know why it took me so long. I pulled the device back out, flipped the tiny switch on its side, and instantly the shrill beeping filled the room again. The second I switched it off, the sound died. Both of us froze, our stomachs sinking. Mike whispered, "Oh my God." And in that moment, we both understood what that meant. The device could only be triggered by hand. Someone else had been inside the house with us. We didn't waste a second. Mike grabbed his phone and called the police while I shoved anything I could against the door, my hand shaking as I tried to barricade us in. Every tick of the clock felt like hours. Finally, flashing lights broke through the windows and we rushed downstairs to meet the officers. Breathlessly, we explained everything and they told us to wait by the front door while they swept the house. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every creak of the old beach house making my skin crawl. When the officers finally came back, their faces told us before their words did, something was very wrong. They said every single window on the third floor was wide open, even the tiny bathroom ones. And the place didn't just look searched, it looked destroyed. Beds overturned, drawers yanked out, belongings scattered everywhere. The room where I had found that strange black device, completely torn apart, like someone had been desperately searching for something. Mike and I just stared at each other in disbelief, because we knew it hadn't been that way before. We weren't losing our minds. Something had happened upstairs while we were locked in that room. But the officers found no one, no fingerprints, no weapons. After 20 tense minutes, all they could do was warn us to keep the house secured and to call again if anything else happened. Then they just left. And Mike and I sat there in silence, realizing how wrong it felt to still be inside that house. Someone, maybe unstable, maybe dangerous, had been messing with us in a way we couldn't explain, and yet we were forced to stay. We told ourselves we'd ride out the night, keep the doors locked, and leave at first light. Somehow we made it through. Nothing else happened, at least nothing we could hear or see, but the silence didn't bring comfort. It only made the night feel heavier. Even now, I can't explain what happened in that house. I don't know how long that device had been there, who set it off, or what they wanted. All I know is the unease never left me. And I can't stop wondering, what if the intruder never actually left at all? What if they're still hiding somewhere in that beach house, waiting for the next unlucky person to step inside?
This happened years ago, back when I was 22, but even now the memory sends a chill down my spine. At the time, life was honestly pretty great. I was fresh out of college, had just landed a good job, and was living at home with my parents rent-free. That meant I was saving money, driving my own car, and sleeping in the room I grew up in. All the comforts of my hometown without the stress most people my age were dealing with. I knew I was lucky and I didn't take it for granted, but just because life looked simple on the outside didn't mean it stayed that way. Not even a month after moving back home, everything shifted. For context, I was never the wild type. No heavy drinking, no clubbing every weekend, no hooking up with random guys. That wasn't me. My life was routine. Coffee in the morning, work, gym, maybe a book or some board games on the weekend. But that all changed one Friday when my best friend from college, Lindsay, invited me and our two other close friends, Sabrina and Thea, to spend a few days at her family's beach house.
From the way Lindsay described it, I knew it wasn't going to be some rundown little shore shack. Her parents are both neurosurgeons, so beach house, in her world, basically meant luxury. When we pulled up, I was stunned. The place looked more like a sleek, modern safe house than a summer getaway. Out of respect for her family, I won't show pictures, but trust me, it was the kind of place you'd expect to see in a movie. Inside, we could have each had our own bedrooms, but what's the fun in that? Instead, we all crammed into one of the kids' rooms, with bunk beds and a bathroom attached, just to keep that sleepover vibe alive. It was our third night there when things really started to unravel, and what started as a fun, carefree weekend with my best friends turned into one of the scariest experiences of my life.
We wanted the first night to be easy, so we headed down to the private beach behind the house, sitting in the sand with white claws, Sabrina's speaker, and the stars above us. It felt calm, almost too calm, until we noticed a faint flickering light in the distance. At first, we thought it was just moonlight on the water, but the longer we stared, the clearer it became. Someone was walking with a flashlight. The way it swung side to side was slow, steady, and eerie enough to silence us all. Soon, we realized it wasn't just one person, but a small group moving closer. They weren't rushing or stumbling, just strolling casually like it was the most normal thing in the world. Then came laughter drifting across the sand. That sound relaxed us a little. Laughter felt harmless, right? A moment later, a voice called out, cheerful, "Hey!" He sounded our age. Thea shouted back, of course, and small talk started from across the beach. As the light grew closer, 3 guys came into view. They looked like the classic beach boy types, tan skin, easy smiles, each with a beer in hand. They seemed maybe a year or 2 older than us. My friends immediately perked up, especially Thea. She's gorgeous, reckless, and guys always notice her. It didn't surprise me at all that they sat down with us like we'd been expecting them. The 7 of us drank, laughed, and the night turned into one of those moments that almost feels perfect. The music mixed with the waves, the moon hung over the water, and for a while it felt like nothing could ruin it. But thinking back now, I know that was the exact moment the weekend shifted, from a carefree night on the beach to something none of us would ever forget. About an hour later, after plenty of drinks and laughter, the guys invited us back to their place. I was already tired and honestly just wanted to crash, but I could see my friends were excited, especially Thea, who was clearly into the idea. Not wanting to kill the vibe, I told them to go ahead without me. There were 3 of them and 3 of my friends, so it felt balanced enough. I had no interest in hooking up anyway. So while the 6 of them headed down the beach, I walked alone back to Lindsay's house. I cleaned up, crawled into bed, and tried to shake the uneasy feeling that crept in as soon as I was by myself. Sometime after 3 in the morning, I jolted awake to a FaceTime call from Lindsay. Half asleep, I almost ignored it, but something in me said to answer. And the second I did, my heart nearly stopped. She was screaming, her words breaking apart, telling me Thea and Sabrina had been kidnapped, and I needed to get her car immediately. It felt like a nightmare, but the terror in her voice made it all too real. My hands shook as I yanked on clothes, stumbling down the stairs, adrenaline burning through me. I asked why she'd called me instead of the cops, but she swore she already had. She just needed me to move, fast. Keeping her on the line, she walked me through it, opening the gate, grabbing her keys, and flooring it out of the driveway. The night air was still, the road empty, and every sound, the tires, the engine, felt deafening. She said they were about 10 houses down the beach, so that's where I drove, gripping the wheel like my life depended on it. She described the SUV and what direction it had gone, and by some miracle I spotted it ahead, crawling down the street like nothing was wrong. I hung up with Lindsay and immediately called 911, whispering details through shaking breaths. The dispatcher told me to stay back, not to tip them off, so I trailed the SUV with my lights low, every second stretching into an eternity. Finally, the road ahead erupted in flashing red and blue. The SUV didn't speed off, it just slowed, like the men thought it was routine. Then chaos hit. Officers stormed the car with weapons drawn, dragging 3 men out in cuffs. And then came the part that froze me. One officer popped the trunk, and there were Thea and Sabrina, tied up, bruised, terrified. Relief and rage hit me at the same time. Seeing them like that made me sick, but also thankful beyond words. That night could have ended in tragedy, but somehow we got them back. And I'll never forget the fear of knowing how close I came to losing my friends forever. As terrifying as that night already was for me, it was nothing compared to what Lindsay, Thea, and Sabrina went through. They were okay with me sharing this, but none of them wanted to write it themselves, and I can't blame them. After I went to bed, they kept drinking with the guys. Lindsay remembers the most since she stayed a little more sober, trying to be responsible in her family's house. At some point, the guys suggested heading to bed. Thea and Sabrina went off with 2 of them, while Lindsay was left with the 3rd. He pressured her to stay, and when she refused, he snapped, yelling at her to get out. She was fine leaving, but halfway home, she realized she had forgotten her purse. When she turned back, she saw the nightmare unfold right in front of her. The guys forcing Thea and Sabrina into the back of their SUV before speeding off. Her blood ran cold. She immediately called the police, then me, her voice shaking with panic. That's when the entire frantic chase began, and none of us would ever see beach houses the same way again. Thea's parents, both lawyers, wasted no time. They pushed hard to keep the case out of the spotlight while making sure those guys paid the price. And they did. The house the men were using wasn't even theirs. It belonged to an elderly couple who were vacationing overseas. Add that to the long list of charges, and the three of them were locked away for a very long time. Still, even with justice served, I don't think any sentence could ever truly make up for what they put Thea and Sabrina through that night. As much as I hate admitting it, that night haunted me for years. Beaches, late nights, even casual conversations with strangers felt impossible. I pulled away from people, even from the girls, because the trust just wasn't there anymore. With time, I've managed to heal, but I know Thea and Sabrina carry scars I'll never fully understand. In a way, maybe not remembering is a blessing for them. What still shakes me is realizing how fragile everything was. If I hadn't gone home when I did, if I hadn't picked up Lindsay's call, we might never have reached a car in time. And if that hadn't happened, the police might never have stopped those men. It's terrifying to think how a small twist of fate can mean the difference between rescue and tragedy.